Are you tired of not filling your RSVPs? Surkus can deliver people to your event even at the last moment. Using their own advanced algorithms, they can match and connect your business with your ideal crowd. Visit Surkus.com to get started or request a demo. That's Surkus.com.
Are you a follower?
9, 8,
Okay,
7,
so we're gonna be
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Executive Editor Beth Kormanik.
Welcome to GatherGeeks. Today we're going to hear from Amir Epstein of RER Productions, which is a talent booking agency. It's their job to coordinate between the event planner and the talent, from contacting the agent, working within the budget, and negotiating rider requests. David, we know that when people hear that Sting and Gwen Stefani are playing at Oracle Open World, or Dave Chappelle is performing a set at the Robin Hood Gala, it can generate publicity for an event and sell tickets.
Absolutely. I mean, the entertainment is still partly a secret weapon in terms of getting people to attend and getting people to tell other people that they did attend. So it's very, very important.
So for our listeners who have never booked big time entertainment for an event or are looking to move up into maybe the bigger spheres of booking entertainment, this is a really great primer on the basics, including how everyone gets paid, which, as we know, is very important.
And the good news about these guys are that they're not direct agents. So they can say anything. They don't have to be so proprietary with the talent that they're dealing with, which is most of the talent agencies really around are really booking it from other places in many cases.
Right. So this is an inside look at how this gets done. So let's take a listen.
So we're here with Amir Epstein from RER Productions, who is a talent guru. I guess that's the best way to describe you, right, Amir?
That's a very, very kind way to describe me, a guru, I suppose, but maybe not, but someone that has been doing it for a little while, yeah.
And you're doing this out of Toronto, but you represent clients all around the world.
That's correct.
So tell us what you do in a nutshell and where you fit into the ecosystem of the celebrity entertainment world.
Sure. Well, we book the client. For the client, we book the artist or the actor or the athlete, whatever they are looking for. And we handle all the production specs and make sure that everything goes smoothly. And we're there for the day of to ensure that everybody has a great time.
But you're not the guy that actually is representing the celebrity. You are in the marketplace to help people facilitate?
Exactly. So, if you go to a major agency, they have their clients and there's 10 other ones. So rather than just offering the clients that this one agency has and pushing one of those clients, we can acquire any talent that the person is looking for. It makes no difference which agency it is because we have relationships with all the top agents.
So what I like about this conversation is you don't have a horse in the race, so to speak.
No,
so you can be as honest as you can be in what's going on in the world because you're not representing a particular client or a talent.
Right. Exactly. We can deter from, certain artists that have a bad reputation for corporate events. We know that, we don't want to deal with that artist. We don't want to deal with this artist. And these are the ones that do really well and make everybody really happy and have a great time.
Okay. When you said bad reputation in events, what does that mean? What happens?
Well, you see, the corporate events are very different than public ticketed events. For the artist, often it's just really a money grab. That's what it is. They're not building a fan base. They're not selling tickets, not promoting anything. They're going to perform their work for hire, and that's where it ends. So a lot of times they kind of feel like maybe they don't want to do it. And, from that point, they just don't do it at all. But if they do want to do it, they just want to kind of get in there and get out of there. So there's some of them are terrific. They go and they have a great time and they want to make sure everybody has a wonderful time and they treat it like they're playing for their fans, which those are the types of artists we like to steer, our
How do you know it's a money grab? What is the key, like that number one thing that that your radar goes off and says, money grab, this is not a client, an entertainer?
I mean, you kind of know. I've been doing this for 26 years. I've been in the music industry for a long time. So I know a lot of the, artists or the comedians that you don't really want to mess with for these types of events. If it's pushed on me, I will, explain this is what you can expect. And then it's up to the client to decide. But at the very least, I want to inform them this is a great, after we've gone through the list of who they want, if they're pushing for a specific artist, I can say, listen, we can get that artist. It's not an issue. But I just want you to know that there are these potential issues that we've either dealt with ourselves or have heard about, just to make sure that you're familiar, with the potential disasters that could come with getting particular artists. So we kind of steer them in the right direction, but not because they are our clients, but because we want to ensure that the event is successful.
So go through a little bit about the chain of command. Like, how many layers are there before it gets to you, that somebody's getting a piece of this, somebody's getting a piece of that? Can you explain to our listeners what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, when a company calls me and they say, "Listen, we're having this event. We want this artist in particular, or options for artists." I go direct to management and agent. If for some reason I don't know the agent, I probably know the manager. If I don't know the manager, I know the agent. I pretty much, it's a small industry. It's not as wide as you think it may be. So I'm able to connect with that person. And then we sort out the date and what it's going to cost for the client, and we try to make it, and I negotiate the best possible deal.
But that's it. That's it. What is that? Like, the manager's getting a piece of it. The agent's getting a piece of it.
Sure.
Like, who are all? What are all the layers when you're paying $200,000 or $1 million for a superstar? How many people are in this mix that it's not just the agent?
Well, the artist has their team, and they could have assistants. I don't know what they're spending. That's their decision. There's always going to be an agent and a manager. Well, not always, but for the most part. And that goes with every event or performance or tour that they do. But in terms of how we get involved, when the corporation calls us or the company calls us and says, "This is who we want," we don't charge the company a fee. We commission off the artist's fee. So if you said to me, we have $250,000, what can we get? I give you a list of artists or comedians or athletes or whatever it is, movie stars. You select one. I reach out to the correct people and speak to them about it. We try to make it work within the budget. If they say great, we book it, and that's what it costs. That's whatever that amount is that we all negotiated. I take from the top from the artist or the musician or whatever, from the actor. Then that artist pays their team, whoever it is, whether the manager takes his percentage and the agent takes their percentage, but that's not an additional amount to our client.
Right.
So whatever that budget is, that stays the same. There's no hidden, and you have to pay for this and this. It's just, this is what the budget is. That's all in. And then the artist disperses that amount.
Is there sort of a typical commission that you can share with us in terms of the range that a booking talent agency would normally get?
Yeah, I mean, an agency commissions are usually 10%. That's kind of the standard. A manager's anywhere from 10 to 20%. So you have somebody like Drake, a $3 million artist to perform at a corporate event. The manager takes his 20%. The agent takes their 10%. That doesn't increase the budget. It's just.
And then are you guys part of the agent or manager, or that's another 10% on top of that, or 15?
Yeah, well, we commission the artist as well, of course.
Right.
But that's not something that the client has to pay on top of the fee.
Right.
So it's just, this is what it costs for the artist. And the wonderful thing is when a company calls the agent, let's say Mercedes-Benz or whoever. As soon as they hear the word Mercedes-Benz, that expense goes up in a big way. So me calling them on behalf of the client saves them a lot of money. And I can share some stories where, people have paid double the rate that they should have. And I knew this, and I was like, okay, well, I can tell you that you're spending double what you should be spending. And I was able to save hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So it's the Wild West. It's the Wild West, this business.
It is the Wild West, of course, and that's kind of the job for the agent. They're trying to get as much money as possible for their artist. And if somebody calls that they don't know and it's a big name corporation, they're going to charge as much as possible, that as much as they think they can get. Whereas if I have a relationship with them, I know what an artist costs, and they're not going to try that stuff. So I'm able to kind of secure the proper, appropriate rate. And that benefits the client.
So that's the talent rate. I mean, what about all the expenses that go along with an artist? What is the typical things that an event organizer needs to know to put into their budget?
Well, if their budget is just for the artist, then that's one thing. You have to obviously be able to satisfy production, which could be very expensive. It could be inexpensive, depending on whether or not you want the Rolling Stones or if you want a comedian who comes out with a microphone and nothing else. Those are, two very different production specs. Stage specs as well. A big band needs a big stage. A comedian doesn't need a big stage. An athlete doesn't need a stage at all. We can walk around and greet people and shake hands. We can do meet and greets. So it really depends on what you're looking to have. But production can get pretty pricey. Then you have the backline as well. The backline is basically things like drums and keyboards and amplifiers. artists don't want to fly with this gear. They don't want to deal with that. So they say, this is what our gear is. This is the type of amp we use. This is the specific drum set we use. And then we have to rent that from the production company or from, whoever can supply that, depending which city we're in. Make sure that it's right to spec, because the other concern is when and this has happened in the past, when an artist was hired to perform, the stage was 2 feet shorter than it should have been. They left. It wasn't my event, of course, but this is from the agents. Like, look, this band is not. If the stage isn't exactly how it should be, or the size it should be, they're not going to perform. So, the client is in danger of losing a huge amount of money if they're not doing things properly. So it's safer to have somebody that knows what they're doing to kind of handle that part of it for them.
So the other thing, the horror stories that I hear about this concept called a writer, and what is that, and what are the horror stories around a writer?
So you're probably referring to the hospitality writer or the food writer. So there's a list. There's certain things that artists require. Of course, it depends on the level of the artist, and we can negotiate certain things down. Celine Dion has a very extensive rider. She wants, white couches and mirrors that are certain shapes, and the air conditioning has to be exactly at this level. There has to be 2 full out showers, baths, steams. Like there's a lot of
What are the most outrageous ones you've heard other than Celine Dion?
Oh my gosh!
Reach deep.
There's a few that are I don't want to out the artist, but there's a few where they're so specific. One of the known industry, it's like they try to trick the promoter or the event planner. What they do is they'll do specific things like M&Ms. You've heard the M&M story. We want M&Ms every color except for blue, or Smarties every color except for blue. And if they see that the blue is still there, then potentially they've also made a mistake in other areas because they're not paying attention. So, testing people out with those types of things, that happens often. Sometimes, requests are just that. They're requests. When they're ridiculous, I don't,
So how do you push back? I mean, what do you do to push back?
Well, I know what the standards are. It's like, guys, we're not doing that. That's kind of how that's the conversations we have. I'm talking to the president of whatever agency, UTA, for example. I'm like, we're not doing that. It's like, okay, I know, look, it's the right. I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but we're not going to do that. Okay, fine. So like I have those relationships. These are people that I've worked with in the past, and we're friends. I've worked with, Selena Gomez and Kelly Clarkson, all these top artists. So they know who I am. They know, like, they're not going to pull that nonsense.
Okay, so Amir, so if you're not you, and you're saying I don't need to spend the commission and get an X Pro, what are the top 3 things that you're getting played by on the writer side? What do you know that's the most ridiculous thing that you see that you say no to begin with?
Any exotic animals, you really shouldn't be bringing. Like, look, if they want their white snow leopard, you're going to have to bring a picture of a white snow leopard or a toy stuffed animal. I mean, but you still have to confirm all these things with the agent or manager or production, manager or the front of house guy or tour manager. There's a lot of people involved, and everybody has their own, duties. So you still have to make sure that those are whatever you're not going to be able to provide. You have to make sure that they approve of that. And sometimes, and I've heard of event planners who are, they've explained what a nightmare it's been. And it's like, well, come on, where are you going to get a white, snow leopard? It's just not going to happen. So you got to be able to kind of stand back at that. But there's some things that are standard. And the standard things, when you start saying, well, no, we're not going to do that, then you're going to have problems.
What are the standard things?
Stage sizes, monitor board, certain monitor boards and mixing boards. You can't put you can't put the police if they, did a show for you or just staying on a tiny little stage. And this is actually why it's so hard to get these artists.
Well,
right?
Let's say that's aspirational for our users. That's an aspirational that happens a couple times in a lifetime. What about the typical $25,000 or $30,000 artist? What kind of writers and special over the fees should you expect and are okay?
Right. Well, so in terms of writer, the production is, there's a range, but it's not that big of a range. I mean, you still have to have professional level, gear, right? You can't be bringing your karaoke machine and expecting $30,000, $40,000 artists to sing through it. So you still have to have a certain level of quality of production. But when it comes to like the hospitality stuff, like, we want a backstage with, a magic mirror that tells the artist who the most beautiful girl of the land is. Well, It's always going to be Snow White. So don't bother with the mirror. It's not going to happen. You got to be able to kind of say, look, this is a little outrageous. Let's try to keep this, cost effective. And most of the time, they'll understand and they'll be able to kind of help out with that. But you never know, right? Sometimes you'll have an agent that's like, nope, this is exactly what it's going to be. And you're paying $30,000 for the artist and it's going to cost another $60,000 for, the most ridiculous rider you've ever seen. So you have to kind of work that down and you have to know what the standards are. And if you don't, you need to have someone who does take care of that.
That's why you work with a professional, somebody that's been doing this a long time, that's not going to get burned on a regular basis.
And now a quick word from today's sponsor. Proving ROI for event professionals can be tough. With Surkus, businesses can connect with the consumers they want the most, shifting unaccountable marketing dollars to directly acquiring an on-brand crowd. Visit Surkus.com to request a demo. That's SURKUS.com.
One of the things we've had in an earlier conversation is that that the celebrity entertainer or person it's like the stock market. What's hot, when, what's hot, what was hot, and their prices go up and down pretty radically depending on where they are on the sort of the meter of popular culture. Can you go through a couple of people, if you're going to hire somebody right now in the next month or so, who would be the top sort of reasonable up and coming act, the reasonable act that's been there, it's coming down? Like what's available on both ends?
Everybody's available if they're available. So it really does depend on the cycle of what they're doing. If they're in the middle of recording a record, if we're talking about artists, then it's going to be difficult to get them to stop recording an artist because they're not stage ready. And that takes weeks to have, a band rehearse and prepare just for your event. It might not happen. It's less likely to happen. Now, if the money is, outrageous, then everybody has a price, so they'll do it. But for the most part, that's something that's going to prevent an artist from performing. If you wanted to have Tom Hanks come out, he's in the middle of filming a movie, that's probably not going to work. So, in terms of scheduling, that's the biggest thing. In terms of trying to catch someone on the up versus on the down, I mean, that changes monthly, even in fact weekly, depending what's going on. There could be an artist that no one's spoken about in a little while, and then, for example, take a look at Rosie O'Donnell. She's kind of disappeared for a while, and then just this week she, apologized to political leaders in North Korea, and now she's all over the news, and now she's popular, and hey, we want to get Rosie to speak about politics. Well, it's going to cost more than it did last week. So those numbers really change. It's just having your finger on the pulse.
I want you to pull the pulse out and tell us who you recommend for. We're having a corporate event, and it's going to be in Toronto, and we want to bring in. Who would be the people that you would suggest today?
That's a very, very broad question.
I know, and I want you to take it any way you want to take it.
First of all, okay, so we're talking about artists. Are we talking about a pop artist, a hip-hop artist, a country artist, a rock artist? If we were to say pop, it's in Toronto, and you want to go local, Canadian versus American.
Yep.
We just did a wonderful event with Toyota with an artist called Headley, who is one of the top artists in Canada. They do stadiums across the country. They were terrific. I mean, they couldn't have been more fantastic. The Toyota president called to say this was the most successful event we ever had. Ever.
Okay. Who would do the same thing in the U.S.? Who would be that act you'd hire in the U.S.?
Drake is.
But Drake's $3 million, right?
You're asking who's one of the people that can really get people going and is super positive and getting people excited and having a great time. For sure, Drake.
But who's the one
go down and price a bit?
Up and coming? The one that we're still at a corporation, and we're trying to be prudent with our dollars. Who would be the?
And you're looking for up and coming artists or actors?
This is for a entertainment band. Let's say a rock band or a. So someone that gets the crowd moving, that when you put on the note on the invitation, this person's going to be there and they're going to perform. Like, who is the most cost effective one?
I would say if you're going to do the rock band that's on their way up right now, that's really entertaining, that isn't that expensive, I'll probably suggest somebody like Greta Van Fleet. They're signed to, I believe, Island. They're a wonderful rock band. They're young guys. They're 18 years old, super young. and they're really on the up right now. They're doing a lot of really big shows across the country, but they're still small enough that you can get them for a good price. Whereas, and it's funny, last year the question, or 2 years ago, somebody was looking into Shawn Mendes, for example, pop artist, and he was only, he was about $100,000. It wasn't a crazy amount of money. Today he's $2 million. And it's just like that quick. It went from $100,000 to $2 million to do an event. It's like these things, that's how this works. Whereas, Nelly Furtado was about $2 million. I'm only mentioning Nelly again because we just, had this event where she was going to be performing, and she used to be $2 million. Now we're looking at about 120, 150 grand.
Wow,
so it really goes up and down.
So what about for us boomers? Like, what are the old bands that are like available?
yeah, everyone's available. Styx is doing a lot of corporate events right now. Journey just did a big event. And the difference between the two is substantial. So if you were to have somebody like Styx do an event, it probably costs you close to about 150 grand or something to that extent. And, this is a classic rock band that everybody knows a lot of their songs. Journey is a little bit more, probably closer to $350,000 to $400,000 because they had more number one singles. It's really that simple. Bon Jovi, you're back in the millions again.
Right, he's been able to maintain his gig.
Well, what's funny is those other bands, they're also maintaining their level of success. Styx is still doing arenas, amphitheaters, Journey as well, some stadiums. Bon Jovi is just he just has so many top 10 singles, and everything. Every show he plays is sold out all over the world, that he can demand that kind of money, and people will pay it because it's, if it's a client who is having a Sweet 16 and she wants The Weeknd, and he has the money, he's gonna spend it. If he wants Justin Bieber, we'll get him Justin Bieber. So it really depends on the budget.
So let's say you're an event organizer and you see that one of these bands happens to be in your town that week. Is it cheaper to get somebody when they're actually already here on something else?
Availability becomes super easy. In terms of rates, sometimes it depends. Again, that's one of the things where, like, if you're an insider like myself, I'm able to go, okay, you know what? Look, your artist is going to be here anyways. In fact, we're doing an event with a Canadian artist named Sam Roberts, who's going to be in town where the corporate event is happening. So it was pretty easy to negotiate a very reasonable rate for my client. Whereas if we had to fly him in, well, we'd have to pay for flights, and there'd be a lot more expenses on top of the rate, but it also would have taken him off his path. So yes, of course, ideally that would work. Now, it really depends on the schedule. Usually when an artist is touring, it's, their days off are very valuable to them because either they need it for their vocals to kind of relax versus, if you have a movie being shot in New York and the actor is Leonardo DiCaprio and you're having a Gatsby style event, he'd be a perfect person to bring over if you can, put in that kind of money. And he happens to be in New York while you're saving on the private jets. You're saving on a lot of expenses.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious stuff when you think about it. Let's move on to comedians. Tell us the go through the same exercise. Event in Toronto, event in the U.S.
Sure. So, look, if the prices range, they're not as crazy as artists. Most comedians, they don't cost $1 million. In fact, I don't think any comedian costs $1 million these days. But if you get somebody like, Russell Peters or Louis C.K., they're on the top. They're top of the game. They're, the funniest guys out there, and everybody wants them to do their events. And they're pretty easy because they don't have a giant, team coming with them everywhere they go. So you'll save in terms of getting them in and stuff like that. And their rates are a lot cheaper than artists, mainly because if you're getting a band, there's 5 people, 4 people.
What's the range? What's the range for a comedian?
Hundreds of thousands, from 10,000, 15,000 to at most probably about $500,000 if you're really going for the big guys, the Seinfelds and the Louis C.K.'s. And then, the smaller artists, you can get Sinbad for today probably about 15 to maybe 20 grand. So, the range again is really, it's pretty wide. It just depends on how relevant the person is in terms of mainstream culture and whether or not they're, they've kind of disappeared over the years, but they're still doing their thing and they're still making their money and they're still successful, just not in the public eye as much. Everyone's talking about Louis C.K., right? he's the guy. He's the rock star right now. So you want to get him, it's going to cost a lot more. In 10 years from now, if he's not the rock star anymore, he'll probably be a lot cheaper. So it really depends.
How do you deal with customization when you're dealing? Is that extra?
No, of course not. Because look, customizing it really, and with comedy especially, it's very relevant. I mean, there's family style comedians versus the crude kind of, comedians that might not work for family style events, depending on your corporate event. If people are sensitive to cursing and that kind of stuff, then you stay away from those types of comedians and you offer up comedians that are more family friendly. So it depends on the event. And then the other thing is we do provide sometimes infographics if they're asking for like, look, this is our company, this is what we do. If it's an in-house corporate event planner versus a private event planner, this is what we're doing. This is the type of people that are going to be there. What do you recommend? Then we provide infographics on the type of people who enjoy that artist or comedian, and that helps them make a decision. Often they're surprised by the information we provide. So, we're always happy to do that as well when they're asking for it. Otherwise, we make recommendations. And again, these aren't our clients. So, we're not, it makes no difference to us who it is. We don't have
right. What about though? Let's say I'm Mercedes or I'm Toyota, and they'll tell their jokes and customize it to the audience. Is that extra?
Well, it's not that it costs more. It's a request you make, and you speak to the team and you see if they'll do something like that. We did have customization in terms of one of the artists. We asked if they speak French or perform a couple of French songs, and they went and they learned a few French
really
songs.
learned
they
it,
did that
really.
for us.
Okay.
No, it was, I've known the manager for a while. I said, listen, this is what we need. Can you help us out? I was like, look, let me talk to the artist. And it's one of those things. If the artist feels comfortable doing it, they'll do it. Yeah. If the comedian feels comfortable doing it, they'll do it. If not, they won't, but you can't ask. I mean, even I always ask, hey, listen, if you can incorporate the company, one of the performers, we're singing a song and instead of saying the name of the city that isn't normally in the song, they mention, the company like Toyota or Mercedes. Yeah, that kind of thing, right? Like, and that comes with whether or not the artist is, someone that we think is going to do a good job. Usually they're in high spirits and they'll do that. They'll do that on their own. I'll ask, hey, if you can get them going, that'd be great. And they'll do it most of the time. But, it just depends on the mood and how everything went up until the event. If they're happy with everything and they didn't wait at the hotel for 3.5 hours.
Let's move on to personal appearances, celebrities, athletes. What is that like in terms of range and time, and what should a planner ask for?
So it really isn't much different. Whether or not you want the artist to perform or the comedian to perform or just show up and shake hands, you'll save on things like production because they're not performing. But, for private events, whether it's a Sweet 16 or a wedding, much of the same applies. It doesn't make much different. It's still technically a corporate event. It's still a private event. Those kind of fall into the same category for the artist or for the comedian. It's not a career builder. It's
right, but what does Leonardo DiCaprio do when he does a personal appearance? Does he just walk around and say hello, or does he talk to everybody?
He's a keynote speaker if it's about the environment.
Yeah.
Or he'll do meet and greets. Those are kind of the two options for big name celebrities. Some of them have a lot to say. Others are not that type of actor. For example, they won't have much political opinion or environment or whatever it is. Some of these celebrities do attach themselves to these causes, and others don't. So we're able to help with that as well. You don't want to have. I don't want to say you don't want to have Robert De Niro because he's one of my favorite actors in the world. But Robert De Niro is not someone who's super social. He's a private guy, and if he comes to your event, you may not get what you think you're going to get out of the guy. Whereas, like you mentioned, Leonardo DiCaprio, he'll go up there and speak about the environment and how tragic everything's been around the world lately, and he'll be able to speak to that, and he'll shake hands and be very polite and tactful and kind. So we're able to help with that as well in terms of what you're looking to have.
So
it really depends on the person.
Who are the most requested personal appearances that you get? And
it's all over the board.
Give us a couple. Give us some samples of what last week. What happened?
Oh, geez.
A couple weeks.
Hold on.
He's got to go look at his list.
I can't even think of last week.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of actors, the comedian from The League. There's a show called The League. I think it just actually got canceled, but really great show. And I don't have his name on the top of my mind, but he was really great. Super nice guy. Greeted everybody, really, really kind. It really depends on the event as well. If it's a private event, it's kind of like you're not looking for people to do a whole spiel about things like the environment or politics. You're just looking to have a meet and greet. Most of the time, you want to get an artist or a comedian because actors at a private event might feel awkward. Like you don't want Tom Hanks. Although Tom Hanks is super, super kind and like very outspoken, and he's hilarious.
And he does personal appearances.
Yeah, of course. He might not be the right fit because there's not much to do, right? When there's 250 people and there's a person just walking around saying hi, you're not getting that same kind of thing as having, Justin Bieber or perform for your daughter's Sweet 16. That's going to get a very different reaction.
Okay, great.
Because he's actually singing and people can actually appreciate the performance.
Okay, so let's go on to a little. First of all, who are your favorite people that you deal with that you love? Do you have any favorites over the last 25 years?
Tell you my favorite. How can I tell you my favorite?
Okay.
Who's your favorite kid, David? Which child do you love?
Okay.
Everybody who puts a good effort in.
How about?
And I stay away from those who don't. I'm not interested in working with artists or comedians or actors who are just sour, negative. I'm not. Those people. I'm not crazy to work with. I'm just not interested.
Okay.
People like Carole King. She is the booby I never had. She's the grandmother I never had. She's wonderful. She's such a sweet woman. I was able to sit with her while she was getting her BMI award, Lifetime Achievement Award. She's incredible, and she'd be great for these events when she's available.
See, you did come up with one. That's fantastic.
Well, she's, I feel like we're almost like family at this point. I've been, become very close with her family, and so, yeah.
That's great.
So I'll say her, but a lot of other artists are really wonderful too, of course.
Well, I want to end on one note. Put yourself in the mind of an event organizer, and what questions should they be asking you that they don't ask when they're requesting an entertainer or somebody? What is the biggest mistake you see that they're making?
The biggest mistake is there's one of two things. Number one, either trust the person you're working with to help you, to lead you towards the talent that you're going to get, or be decisive from the get-go. You don't want to start going from, you don't want to keep asking what things cost, and when you're going from across the whole board, calling and asking about an artist and then changing it to comedian and then changing it to actor and then going back to artist but different genre, you're going to end up going in a circle and you're going to get so tired you'll forget what it is that you want entirely. It just becomes very, very difficult. So one of two things: either trust the people that are helping you get the artist to make good decisions for you, and they'll give you options and say, and help you, direct you, or come into this with, these are the 5, that's who I want, this is the budget, can you make it happen? So one of those two things. You also don't want to call particular agencies because they only have their roster. They're not going to send you to an artist that isn't on their roster. So keep that in mind. And finally, when you're working with somebody, unless it's one of the major agencies and you're on a website that's called Celebrity This or Celebrity That, those are not real agencies. They're middlemen. There's some not different than myself, but they misrepresent who they represent. They don't represent any artists. We don't represent any artists. We just have the relationships with them.
So most of the rank and file people that do what you do are not connected specifically with an artist.
No, none of them are.
Yeah,
none of them
make it look like they
any
are.
Of the artists.
Yeah.
And I had a meeting with President just literally last month, who said some of these places are actually blacklisted because they say they represent the artist that the agent that does represent the artist represents. So, they get upset about that, and then all of a sudden you'll call someone and they'll say, oh, maybe you should try someone else, because they know they can't get to that artist because of the particular agency that they're blacklisted from. So that's, any website that says they represent a whole bunch of artists that isn't a real agency, like, William Morris Endeavor and Creative Artists Agency, those are the real big agencies. If it's like Celebrity This or somebody, like some random thing like that, they don't represent any of the artists, and chances are they're blacklisted from a lot of them. So they'll be pushing artists that they're able to get rather than the artists that you want them to get.
But what's the difference then between a speakers bureau and what you do? I mean, is it a little, I mean, there's Washington Speakers Bureau and there's all these big speakers. There's about 5 or 6 major speaker bureaus. You don't cross into that area, do you?
We don't really get involved in that as much. We're more about the celebrities than we are about, speakers for different types of things. So that's kind of a different service. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a particular speaker to speak on a particular issue matter, most of the time you're not really caring about the fact that they're a celebrity, then that's who you should definitely be going to. If you're looking for a celebrity of any kind from the entertainment industry, then you call RER Productions and we'll take care of it.
Well, on that note, this has been a fascinating discussion. Can you tell us how do people get in touch with you to book their next celebrity talent?
Yeah, just go to the website. We have a phone number there, so you don't have to fill up one of those annoying forms and wait for someone to call you 3 weeks later.
What is that website?
The phone number is there, and the website is RERProductions.com. Just click on that and give us a call, and we'll get on it for you.
And how do people get in touch with you through other social means?
Well, when you call the RER Productions phone number, just ask for Amir Epstein.
So it's the old-fashioned phone number is the best way to get in touch with you.
Yeah, you know what? Believe it or not, I still feel like, being able to speak to somebody, you get a lot more in a conversation than an email. 20 emails will be a 5-minute conversation. So I'm always available. I work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Great. Well,
my wife is okay with it. Thank God. So we're still happily married. But, this job requires, attention 24/7. Otherwise, things could fall through the cracks and it could be very costly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amir. This has been great.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you at BizBash in New York.
Great. I look forward to it.
Thanks for bringing us that interview, David. For you, what was the biggest takeaway?
The idea that entertainment is entertainment everywhere, and people are really they're trying to find what's the best match for their organization, and it's a trial and error. So they have to trust these people that are out in the marketplace, because it's like it is a marketplace, because the prices go up and down depending on who's popular and who isn't popular and what your budgets are. So you may not need to get the most high profile person in the world and still accomplish your goals.
Right. For me, this really hammered home the value of relationships. And I think that's a selling point that I heard Amir hammer home multiple times, right? He says he knows the agents and managers and knows the reputations of the talent and how they behave at corporate events, as well as knowing the industry, how to determine if a writer request is ridiculous or if it really is essential to having a successful performance.
Saying no is a skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But sometimes you really can't say no because they need that mixing board. And if you don't have it, the event is not a success.
Absolutely.
So, our listeners may have heard Amir mention at the end, see you in New York. Well, everyone, in fact, can see us in New York on October 25th for BizBash Live. It's our biggest show for the meeting and event industry, and we have a great lineup of speakers along with an exhibit hall full of vendors, all designed to give you inspiration for your own events. You can learn more about that at bizbash.com.
Great. We're looking forward to seeing everyone there.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on. Invest in yourself and your staff with self-paced online event education designed to fit into your busy schedule. Subscribe to the Event Leadership Institute for only $25 per month and gain access to an extensive on-demand video library of classes, as well as interviews with industry leaders. Best of all, you can watch classes in small pieces or all at once. For more information, visit eventleadershipinstitute.com.